She is currently in the School of Ministry, has another year to go, so she's a ministerial intern. She's a woman who truly lives the science of mind philosophy, and we're so very blessed that she has come back to us. So please join me in welcoming home Lynne Heygster.
So this is the month of gratitude, and we have been experiencing Reverend Marty's homemade list of laws of gratitude. And first we started with the law of grace, then the law of presence, then the law of expectation. And today we get to visit the law of faith. And it's an interesting one because it's something that you experience. The first quote I want to share with you is from Mahatma Gandhi. This is one that Reverend Marty picked to go with the theme today. That faith is of little value, which can flourish only in fair weather. Faith, in order to be of any value, must survive the severest of trials. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, has a quote that he wrote. It's my favorite one in the Science of Mind book, page 282.4 in bold letters. I can tell you that. I cannot repeat it without reading it, but I can tell you exactly where it is. And it is, to desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth. Right? When things look the worst, that is the supreme moment to demonstrate to ourselves that there are no obstructions to the operation of truth. Both of these quotes tell us that when we are in a challenge, it is our faith that pulls us through that challenge. So I'd like to tell you a little story about faith. So there's this minister that has found a kitten up in a tree. And he wants to help get this kitten down from the tree. So he tries to think, what can he do? What can he do? The tree actually is tall, too tall to reach the kitten, but not strong enough for him to climb. So it's like, oh, okay, I think I'm going to tie a rope around the tree, and I'll attach it to the back of my car, and then my car up, and then we'll pull the tree down, and I'll get the kitten, right? So he connects the rope to the tree and connects the rope to his car and inches the car along, but then kind of like overshoots the distance a little bit. That rope snapped, that tree goes, and that kitten goes flying. It's like, the little kitty. So he goes around the neighborhood looking for the cat, can't find the kitty, asks people, no one has seen it, doesn't know what to do. And the only thing he can do is put his hands together and pray, Dear Lord, I commit this kitten into your hands for your safety. All he can do, and then he goes about his way. So he's at the grocery store the next day, and and he meets one of his congregants. And when you bump into people at the grocery store, you're kind of eyeing what they're eating for the week. And he notices that she has cat food in her basket. Well, this is a known cat hater, so that really brings up some questions for him. So he finally just says, I just have to ask you, why are you buying cat food? I know you don't like cats. She goes, oh, well, I just have to tell you, my little girl has been begging for a cat, and I keep telling her no. She keeps begging. I keep telling her no. And finally, I just said, if God gives you a cat, we're going to keep it. And oh, Rev, you just won't believe this. I wouldn't have I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. When I told her, if God gives you a cat, she goes right out in the front yard. She gets down on her knees. She puts her hands together. She prays to God for a cat. And lo and behold, this cat didn't just come right out of the clear blue sky. It landed right on the ground in front of her. And I said we had to keep it because it came from God. So that little girl had some faith that day. And it showed up. And her mother grew faith that day. So they tell us that when we're doing a talk to talk about what we know. One thing I know about faith is that it is personal. It is something that we feel. You have to have the experience of it to match it up with what it is. But there are the intellectual descriptions as well. It is a belief. It is a system of religious belief. It is an obligation or fidelity and obedience to royalty or to something or to someone. And it is really a belief not based on proof. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. To reword that might sound like faith looks into the invisible, and instead of seeing a void, it actually brings a reality into it. Do you like that? Okay. And it's actually the power of our prayer, isn't it? Faith is the power of our prayer. It's the juice behind the understanding of the principle and the law together that brings the conviction of our prayer and brings our demonstration. From the science of mind, it is a mental attitude so inwardly embodied that the mind can no longer deny it. The mind can no longer deny it. Faith is complete when it is both a conscious and a subjective acceptance. Faith can be consciously generated, like that mother when she saw a kitten come flying out of the sky. She had some faith in God in that moment. In spiritual terminology, faith means a belief in the presence of an invisible principle and law which directly and specifically responds to our thought and our prayer. That little girl praying for that kitten had pure faith. Her mother grew the faith. But that little girl had her childlike faith, and that faith was demonstrated. Of course, unbeknownst to her, that cat was going to land somewhere, right? But who's to say when you put that conviction in that prayer and you have that faith, that brings that demonstration right to you. So that kitten could have landed somewhere else, but her prayer, her faith was that magnet. And what is childlike faith? Well, it's kind of absolute, isn't it? Children know what they want it when they want it, and it kind of just is. The little minds have not yet been filled with doubt and obstacles and obstruction to have a question. The Master Jesus carried the essence of childlike faith. He had pure faith in the universe, in the faith of the universe, and in that that implicit goodness of the divine that is always right there, solid. No question. A child's mind is more receptive to the truth. As an adult today, our minds are overstimulated with all the technology and being analytical, and we want proof before we have faith. We want explanations, but not a child's mind. To a lot of us coming into this philosophy and other religions, we have to go through a process of unlearning to let go of some of that doubt and some of those questions, and to open up our mind and our heart to build that congruence, to allow that presence and that feeling and that experience of faith to come in. And that can be a challenge for some. What is blind faith? That term gets a lot of negative judgment sometimes. But I have to say, if it's blind, it isn't faith. If it's faith, it isn't blind. Remember, it's something that the mind just cannot deny anymore when you really have faith in something. It's very real for that person who experiences it, and it just cannot be denied to them. And let me ask you a question. Outside of our circles, would science of mind treatment be described as blind faith to someone else? We pray for the outcome of our desire, but we don't give an explanation of how that happens. We just know it's going to happen. And it does. Marianne Williamson says, faith is an aspect of consciousness. We either have faith in fear or faith in love. And we either have faith in the power of the world or we have faith in the power of God. Marianne Williamson is also known for her work with the Course in Miracles, and one of their phrases is, only love is real. And I believe that. Only love is real. And love is the language between souls. That beautiful communication. We are made of love, of the mind of that infinite most high that only knows love, that highest unconditional positive regard. And if we're made of that, there's nothing we have to ever do to prove, to receive love, or to be in love, or to give love. It's already what we are. And since that's true, wouldn't it make sense that having faith in the infinite is a natural experience for us? It's a verb. It's actually an ongoing activity in our body, in our mind, in our heart, to know that we are connected in that. And since our belief and thought is a component of the creative process, we talk about thought plus feeling equals demonstration, then having faith in the goodness of the infinite for the good and the guidance in our lives is a natural result. Being in faith, living in faith, having faith makes us a co-creator for our lives. So it's always easier to describe faith by example and story rather than try to go through this intellectual piece. As I said earlier, my favorite quote is, "To desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth." And I can't remember that phrase to save my life. I have to always look at it. I type it out, I make bookmarkers with it, and I can tell you where it is. I just can never repeat it without looking at it. But I chose that one early in my knowing of science of mind because I think it absolutely reflects what this philosophy is about. We keep the single eye straight on the outcome. We pray, we meditate, we vision, we do our treatment, and we know and affirm with conviction that the outcome that we choose is the demonstration. Now, I'll step over here for a minute and say it's a whole nother talk and day when we talk about why those demonstrations don't always look like what we think we want them to look like. But there is a demonstration when we do treatment. So here's my story. The morning of November the 12th, 2011, I woke up, I sat on the edge of the bed, and my back went into spasms. I've had some back issues. I injured my back when I was a child, and I have injury with my sacrum and stuff. So it talks to me every now and then. And we had a wonderful conversation that morning. And it went into spasms, and I froze. Anybody ever had that happen? You can't move when you're stationary. And so, of course, you wake up in the morning, and the first thing you'd like to do is go visit the bathroom. And there I was, stuck in there, and I'm alone. My phone's not near me. That's when you think, was it smart to live alone? And you just can't go anywhere. And so I really just kind of leaned myself kind of off the bed a little bit, caught the dresser, and inched my way into the bathroom. Got myself in a sitting position there. And it hurt so bad that there was no way I could tilt my pelvis to kind of get comfortable and I couldn't get up. Once I was down, then I couldn't get up. But I had the most interesting thing happen at that point, and my fingertips started to tingle and go numb, and then I felt that moving up my hands, and it was kind of like being in the Matrix taking the blue pill, right? I mean, I'm watching this feeling move up my forearms then, and my thought was, this cannot be good. And that was the last thought I had. The next thing, I heard voices. I heard lots of voices. I could only think that the only time I've heard that many voices in one place was in like a convention somewhere. I thought, where the heck am I? And then as I tried to focus my eyes, what I saw was what I thought looked like commercial carpet at the Salt Palace. And that's where I thought I was. And then as my eyes started to focus, what I realized was I was on the floor trying to focus on the tile in the bathroom. And I had fainted and fallen down, and I was lodged between the toilet and the wall, which was just as big as my head, and that was it. And so I kind of squeegeed myself out, into a bigger area. But I was on my knees, and I could not get up. I still couldn't stand up. And I got scared. So the only thing I do was what I knew to do. I just said, God, angels, I'm surrendering this to you, and you got to help me because I don't know what to do right now. And in that moment and in that space was this sentence that I can never remember on my own. And it was as clear as day. To desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth. And I said, thank you. And I did a treatment for wholeness. I did a treatment for the truth of what I was, not to heal anything because I knew what I already was. And I did the treatment for wholeness and for my body. And within a couple minutes, I was clearly able to get up easily. And I got dressed. And I did self-care for the rest of the day. After the first service, someone said, I want to know what happened after that. Well, I spent the day with my head in the Science of Mind book, I'll tell you, because I was in a place of awe that worked that well and like that. I have a friend that was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And this person went to the doctor, let them do all of their exams, all their tests. When they came back with their diagnosis and explanation of what they knew for his life, he decided to do a partnership with them. And he refused to do chemo. And he told them that they were going to work together, and he was going to be the decision maker for what really was going to happen with his body. And so they agreed to do a partnership with him. They kept testing him and just kept watching where his body was going. And he used his practitioners, and he took some of their medicine, but he refused to do the chemical and the really bad stuff, the chemotherapy. And he is now absolutely, totally cancer-free. The doctors don't know why. They don't want to know why. And MDs, he calls them minor deities. What he did was he held his truth. He held his truth in that power of need. And he refused to actually take ownership of the diagnosis. He refused to take ownership and internalize the idea of cancer. He wanted to hold that notion of wholeness. He did not tell any of his friends, even being in stage 4, he did not tell any friends. He only told a very few of his family members, because all he wanted enveloped around him was the idea of people seeing wholeness as him. And that's how he unconsciously, without saying anything, had them help him, just by knowing his wholeness. And today he's very healthy. He still goes for checks every now and then because he wants to keep that baseline. The point for him was to understand that, we're not Christian Science, we are religious science, science of mind, so doctors have a very important place in this world. The whole medical field has an important place in this world, but so does the power of truth. And when we keep our faith in that and bring both of these elements together, then that's really the best outcome for us, especially for that person. Isn't that a great story? Yeah. The Bible talks a lot about faith, and I picked one quote that I really liked. Colossians 2:7. Let your roots grow down into him and draw up nourishment from him. See that you go on growing in the Lord and become strong and vigorous in the truth you were taught. Let your lives overflow with joy and thanksgiving for all he has done. I want to put that into our language. First of all, we don't have to let our roots grow down into him. They're already there, aren't they? Our roots were in that infinite, and in whatever you want to call it, was there before we came into physical form. So it's already there, and it is always giving to us. The infinite, by whatever name you want to call it, is always giving to us. And how much we accept that really balances with our level of understanding of what that is and what that can be for us. So our task really is to remember and awaken and expand our acceptance and understanding of it. To continuously take in the nourishment and the goodness of the infinite that is always available. So I have one last little cute story for us that talks about faith again. And when I went to Tucson, I took my mother with me, and she's kind of under my care. When I came back from Tucson here, brought my mom back up. And she has to be in a care center and under Medicaid because of the cost and stuff. So in Tucson, it's a very easy process down there, and it was wonderful. And I used my faith and to really find the right place for her. And the process of coming up here, I made a bunch of phone calls while I was still there in Arizona, thinking I was getting everything lined up the way it was because I was going on my past experience with Tucson. Well, I didn't get all the right information. It's a very different system up here. The funding is very different, and it really runs you around the block. And I got real angry, wanted to blame them for not giving me the right information, but we don't know what we don't know. What really happened was, I gave my story and our need, what it was, and didn't realize how much more they needed to know in detail, and they weren't giving me everything, but I didn't know that. So I come up here, once I land here, find out that the fact that I even took her off of an airplane disqualified her from going immediately into care. So, I had to start this process almost from scratch again. So Mom lived with Bob and I for the first 3 weeks. And I would wake up at night and be really scared because what was this process going to be like here? It was very different, and I'd be very worried how this was going to work out and where she was going to end up and was she going to be taken care of. And there would always be this voice that would come in, and it was very calming, and it said, if you look back, everything has always fallen into place. There's no need to worry. everything falls into place and you always get the guidance you need. And that's so true. And then I would fall back asleep. So I narrowed the places down to the one where I wanted to put Mom and went to visit them and meet the administration and walked up to the front door this day, and there was a car parked right there with one of those license tags, and it said, "Meant to be." Is that great? And I knew that that was a message for me. So I went in, and we did all the paperwork and everything. I had a bunch of stuff already ready for him. And I got my mother accepted in this place and with Medicare within 6 days. So a few days later, I'm at an event, and I'm talking to a hospice nurse. And she says, "So where did you end up with your mom? How did that go?" And I told her where I put Mom, and she said, "Well, that's really amazing. That place has a waiting list a mile long. How'd you do that?" I said, "Prayer." She goes, "No." I said, "No, really, I prayed." She goes, "Uh-uh." I said, "Well, I went in and I really cried." She goes, "Yeah." So it's like she was not able to accept the fact that prayer is my tool and vehicle of my faith. Especially as a practitioner, as a minister, we live in that. That's how our mind works now. And she could not accept that. But she was more than happy to accept that prayer was that crying was the full thing that got me in the door. So that was great. So Mom is happy. I'm happy. When Mom's happy, we're all happy. So it is my hope that in this talk today, something resonated for you to help you on your journey of faith, to help continue to expand that whole idea of faith and that feeling of faith. And so I invite you this week to look back on things that unfold for you and try to get a feel for, does it look like it happened from luck, from haphazard, from coincidence? Or does it look like it happened because it was something that you absolutely had faith in and you let that carry you? So have fun playing with that this week. And so now it's our time for prayer. I would like to invite our practitioners and ministers who are available to serve this community just to stand up just during the prayer right where you are and to hold the space for this. And if you will all turn towards the center of the room. And my quest in this is that the people can see you and see your face. These are the people who've gone through a lot of training to know what they know and do what they do for you. These are the people that pray with you and know the truth and hold that truth. And if you have a need or a challenge for prayer and you can't find your faith, then you can have faith in their faith because that's what they are. But I also invite you to go for a prayer treatment even if you're happy, because you know what? Happiness is a good thing. And it expands, and to allow a practitioner to treat from a place of happiness is a wonderful thing. So let's go into prayer. So settling into this place right now, I am so filled with gratitude. I know that that infinite expanding place of source of creation and of love fills everything about this room and every individual in it. It's already embedded, and it is the language of every cell and particle of every body that exists in this room and everywhere and everything. And so I know that the one great thing about this presence is that it is always giving. It is always giving of itself in every way and in every category and in every piece of substance. And so there's no reason not to have that fullness of faith and that faith of the divine. Not just faith in the divine, but the faith of the divine, because we are of that. And it is always willing to give. And so I know and claim that for each individual here, for the week following, the days, the moments, that in every prayer thought that is had, the infinite is right there expanding the idea of understanding of all it can be and all it can do. the richness of that, I know, vibrates out to this full community and to this planet. And I am just filled with gratitude for that. And I know there is a great blessing in this message. There's a great blessing in the center. There is a great blessing of every path that leads to that thing that we know as God. There's a great blessing to every minister, every rabbi, every teacher of every faith, for it all culminates in the one. And so with absolute joy, with an absolute conviction of faith in everything that is and everything that I know that continues to expand, I know this for each individual here, I release this into the law, and knowing it is done, knowing the right result. And so knowing that is claimed as well by each one here, together we say, and so it is.